Good heavens above. Let's see now. It seems like we've got someone. Oh, I've not seen him before. Who's this lad here? Gillett. Hello, buddy. How you doing?
Oh, that's me. I didn't know I was on next. So yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, thank you, Sparrow. That's a tough act to follow, my friend, because you have a voice like an angel and the charisma of a very charismatic moose, I would say. I'm going to tell a story, if that's okay. Is that okay with everyone? Can I tell a story? Because kind of what I do. Right, headphones warning. There's lots of caveats, obviously, because where are my tattoos? What is this thing on my head? Why am I not wearing more buttons on my shirt? So many questions, but we don't have time for this. So let's start with a story. This is the story of the virtues of Jarm. Now, when I was a lad, I grew up in the forest and the trees like any good Navarre, and I walked the trods, and I always had an ambition to sail the seas, you see. And when I became a man, that's exactly what I did. So I set off on my ship around the world, and this is a few months ago. It could be a year ago, I'm not really sure at this point. Time seems to move in a very strange way at the moment. But I set off east, far off east over the seas, to a place called the Principalities of Jarm. And for those that don't know, the Principalities of Jarm is a long-term trading partner of the Empire. They unfortunately still practice the evil, wicked ways of slavery, which has put us at odds with them in recent years, which is a shame, because I personally quite like visiting them. Let me tell you a story about one time I went to see them. Arriving at port, I heard a story of the most beautiful princess in Jarm. Now, me being an adventuring fellow, I wanted to test out this theory and see exactly how beautiful this princess was. So off I went and found out this principality. And there, they have an interest in people from the Empire because they have recently discovered the virtuous ways of the way. So up I went into the court. The fineries, the bells, the singing, the music, the tapestries, the silks. The food was delicious, by the way, I have to say. But up I went, up into the court, and I was presented in front of the most beautiful princess in all of Jarm. She was staggering, by the way. And she told me that she was a very virtuous person. I said, that's fantastic. I mean, it's good to see the way being practiced so far away from the Empire. It is the way, and you'll lead to a wonderful life and a perfect afterlife if you follow the way. And she said to me, I'd like you to do me a favor, young Gellert. I want you to tell the Empire how virtuous I am. And I said, this is a trade. Surely there must be something in it for me. And she said to me, if you do this, Gellert, I will grant you a kiss. So me being an adventuring fellow, I thought this is fair trade. I will go and explain how virtuous she is. But I had to tell her, listen, I'm no priest, but I'm not a liar either. And if I don't find you virtuous, I won't be able to tell that tale. And she said to me, well, if you don't want to tell that tale, I'll put you in my dungeon for the rest of your days. Okay, I said, that's a fair trade. I get a kiss. And if I go and tell this story, and if I don't find you virtuous, I spend the rest of my life in a dungeon. That seems perfectly reasonable to me. So let's begin. So she took me out to the top of her castle and showed me her entire kingdom from there. It was a city lay beneath it, and she told me that all the lands that lay before her belonged to her and her family. And she said, surely this is ambition. Anyone in their right mind would their ambition would be to be where I am right now. And I looked over her kingdom, queendom, princedom, princessdom, and then I said, listen, I'm no priest, but surely this was the ambition of your ancestors. All you do is maintain this wonderful empire. This is not an ambition. This is not the way. And she looked at me. And she smiled and said, lock him in irons. And there I was. And off I led down to the dungeon, where there was a very nasty wee fellow with no tongue who looked after me while my stay was there. So the next morning, I get woken up very rudely by my keeper and told me I had to leave. So off I went, clapped in irons, and we led off to a local village where the princess's legions waited above this village. And the villagers lay there with a small barricade and some pitchforks, and she ordered her forces in to crush the village. And she told me that the village was up in rebellion, some small quarrels, but she wanted to smash this down, to show her courage. And I said, as I watched this carnage below me of well-trained knights and mercenaries destroy these hapless folk, I said, this is not courage. The brave thing to do, the courageous thing would be to go down to the villagers and listen to their worries. This is not courage. So she smiled at me and said, clap him in irons. And off I went. And off I went back to my dungeon cell, where I started to talk to my dungeon keeper a little bit more, who turned out to be more of a reasonable fellow when I started to play checkers with him. He turns out to be quite an intelligent fellow once you get to know him. While we were being served dinner with the princess when she took me upstairs, we were in the hot baking sun, and the only thing that was covering us was a group of slaves holding fans, giant fans over us. And we sat there in the shade while they sweltered in the heat, and we ate food. And she said to me, look around you. There isn't a ray of sunlight that touches your skin to burn it. All these people here are here to protect you. Is that not loyalty to me and to my kingdom? So I stood up, eating a chicken wing, and approached one of the slaves. And I said to him, excuse me, good sir, why do you stand here in the sun protecting us? And he looked nervously at the princess, and she ordered him to speak. And he said, honestly, I do it because I was told to do it. And I said to him, what would happen to you if you didn't do that? He looked at the princess again and looked away, and she said, well, he would be punished. And I said, this is not loyalty. You're not showing loyalty to these brave slaves who stand here in the sweltering sun. This is not loyalty. So she smiled and looked at me and said, clap him in irons, and off I went up to the prison again, and spent the rest of the evening playing checkers with my keeper. The next day, I was woken around midday. I had slept in a little bit, must be said, but I was taken with the princess through the town. And we walked through slums and downtrodden areas with filth on the streets and people begging and hunger all around me. And we walked down the streets through to a business district, and it was caked in marble, and there was no filth on the streets, and everyone was well dressed and well fed. And she took me through to her great mausoleum for her family, and that led through to a tax office. And in the tax office was 100 tax collectors counting coins. The sound was deafening as I walked in. And all of them wore fineries and robes and drank wine while they worked. And she told me that every single coin that comes in through taxes, one of two goes into a giant vault that no one can enter. And she just collects the wealth for a payday once in a generation after a generation that might be spent. And she said, surely this is pride and prosperity. I honor my family's heritage and I collect wealth. And I said to her, listen, I'm no priest. I'm no priest. However, pride, I walk through slums where people are starving. Where is the pride in those? I see your tax collectors. I see their pockets fat with the money they've collected on the sly. They are corrupt. You are not vigilant. And finally, prosperity is not about hoarding wealth. It is about spending wealth and helping those around you. People you care about, your kin, your striding, your nation, your empire. So she smiled and said, clap him in irons. And off I went back to the dungeon again. Now my dungeon keeper had become worried because even a foolish man such as him knew there were only 7 virtues. There was only 1 virtue left for those that aren't paying attention at home. There is but wisdom. And he said to me, Gellert, Ashbourne, Gell, or I should say, Ashbourne, Gell, because that's how he actually spoke. But I'll speak in my own tongue to make it more simple. I love hanging out with you. It's been great these few days. But your freedom is so important to me, and you've given me a new lust for life. And I said, no, stop. You're very welcome. I'll be fine. Don't worry your ugly, misshapen head. So the next morning, I wake early this time. And I wait. And I wait. And I wait. And then eventually I just try the door and I find it unlocked. So I leave my little cell and I walk up through the palace and it's deserted. No more chatter of people in the court. No more servants bustling. Just quiet. And I walk through the palace. I get to the main gate and I look about the main road out of town. There's nothing to stop me, not a guard in sight. But I turn and I walk up the stairs. I still want that kiss. So I walk up the stairs and I go to her bedroom and I hear weeping. So after a small knock, I open the door and I enter the room. I find her there. Lines of tears marking her face. And she turns to me and says, Gell, what are you doing here? You should have left by now. And I said, we made an agreement. I want a kiss, and I also want to tell people how virtuous you are. And she turned to me and said, but Gellert, I don't want to put you in my prison for the rest of my days. I've realized now that the last of these are wisdom. And I've realized now that I've been so foolish in looking at the virtues. I've misunderstood each of them. And each of them I've made myself more and more foolish. The truth is, I know very little about the virtues, and I'm keen to learn. And I sat with her there and I held her hand and I said to her, well, at least you get one of them right. Wisdom is understanding that we know nothing, and it's the pursuit of that knowledge that will vitalize our lives and make it better for us and everyone around us. And she leaned forward then, and she kissed me. And then she turned and whispered in my ear, strength for the Empire. And I said, strength to Navarre! And that's my story.
Wow. I don't think any of us were expecting that.
That's my story, guys.
And that is a fantastic story. Thank you very much, Gary.
Good.